When the Grubhub arrives, I will stop the video. That's my promise. That's the promise I'm making to myself. Hi everyone, it's Braylon and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm a kindergarten through third grade special ed teacher, and right now I am teaching in person 4 days a week and virtually 1 day a week. If you have not seen my vlog of a week in my life, please check that out first. Okay, now that those losers are out of the way, this video is talking and comparing in-person versus remote teaching because, like I said, I'm doing both. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm teaching in person from about 7:45 to 2 p.m. I have 2 students who are virtual, which I am still providing them their services. They join in on a lot of calls that we have. They join in on little groups that we have. They're on Zoom. The rest of us are in person. And then I also do individual academic times with them at the end of the day. So it's a lot of work. It's tricky when you're doing both in person and virtual because there are so many pros and so many cons to each type, to each mode. We kind of already know this. I mean, as teachers, we know what's working and what's not working. I've received questions asking me about what I like about remote and what I like about in person, and I thought it would just be easier to make a video about it. The way this video is going to go, I'm going to talk about the pros and the cons of each type of teaching, but really quick, I'm going to show you a 2-minute montage of a day in my life teaching remotely. So, watch the clip. Good morning. It is Wednesday, and today is a remote learning day. Every Wednesday we have remote learning for half the day, and then we have PD and like prep, consult time, like all the other things for the second half of the day. So I'm really excited, but I'm excited because today I can eat my lunch, I can actually sit, I can get stuff done, I can see kids one-on-one, I can talk with my coworkers. Like, there are a lot of benefits to it. Usually I work from home, and I was really tempted to work from home today, but I think it'll be really good for me to work from the building and teach, because during those like break times I can print and copy, and I have a couple things I want to rearrange, and so I just want to like be there, but it definitely will still be a packed day, like just as full as any other day. So all right, hi. So I'm at school. I already had 2 lessons today, which is why I do like my remote days sometimes, because I just have to focus on the lessons like one at a time. And even though like I have to differentiate for different kids, I get to like focus in on one task. And I think that's something that's so different than when you're teaching in person. You just have kids all over the place. So we did this boom deck, and 2 of my students can do like addition, which they can do it best when it looks like this, when they can count the 2 sets and then find the answer. And then a few more of my students are only working on counting. So I chose this one to do as the whole group, and each student got a turn to solve the problem. And then for the students who were just counting, then they had something to count. So for a few of them that can just count, I would say count the dots. And so then they would go through and count the dots. We also did a community signs activity where we kind of did like a boom lesson, and we talked about different community signs. So that's kind of what we did. We did other like small things. We sang songs for our morning meeting. We did calendar and all that stuff. So now I'm done with my lessons because that was a half day. And I'm really excited because I was actually able to finish my coffee, which is also huge. And I actually get to take a real lunch break because normally in my lunch breaks, I'm teaching a lesson. So I eat as I teach, which is not ideal. Yeah, so far I really like it. I feel like I'm super energized when I can just teach and focus on that. It's obviously not ideal when it comes to kids having behaviors, because there were a few that happened in our call, and that was unfortunate, but I would just mute them and continue on. So that's another thing I think that's been kind of nice. So I'm going to, what am I going to do first? Honestly, I think I'm just going to plan and listen to music, and then print before my next meeting. So, but one thing that was definitely not good was just the fact that while we were teaching our small groups, I just felt like I couldn't really hear if the students understood or not. And I think that's the hardest part, is like, you present something, even if you have a small group or you have a breakout room, but you just don't know if they're comprehending. You have to rely on like the parents and hope for the best when you present them materials tomorrow. And that was like the hardest part. And I also think having parents watch you is so awkward, like so awkward. And so that's the other thing that I've really had a hard time with, is just like parents are there and then they're texting me while I'm teaching. Why? So that's another piece that I'm not the biggest fan of. Honestly, it'll probably be 1 minute of reused clips from other vlogs of me teaching in person. So watch that clip. Head. She has hair on her head. Now let's look at this one. Can you see this? Look, it's pointing to this right here. What's that? Now that you're back, let's actually sit down and chat and talk about what's good and what's not. And don't mind my phone, because all of my notes are right here on my phone. It's tricky. Let's start with the cons, because we want to end on a good note. So let's talk about the not so good things about in-person and the not so good things about remote. So honestly, when it comes to teaching in person, my biggest con are the germs and the exposure. I'm just going to be honest. There are a lot of germs, there's a lot of exposure. Depending on students, they might not be able to cover their mouths when they cough. They might not be able to like wash their hands independently or go to the bathroom independently. It's all different and every classroom is different. So I'm not giving any like specific examples, but I think it just is a little bit more risky. And I think that's like a huge con. It's the biggest reason that people are not teaching in person. Honestly, I think another big con is just like overall behaviors and trying to navigate the regression that has happened since closing schools down in March. And having to navigate all of that can be kind of tricky, especially the next con are all of the CDC guidelines and specific school-wide guidelines that you have to follow. So it's not just like, oh, go back to teaching in person and do it how you normally do it. It's like, how can we be safe? We might not be able to have a morning meeting on the rug. We might not be able to share toys. We won't be able to play together and work on certain social skills. We're not going to be able to, have the same types of experiences with peers and all of that stuff. Those are like huge cons, because you have to navigate what it looks like to have a classroom and to teach during this time. It's not pretty and it's not very fun, and it can feel stifling at times, and it can just feel really, really uncomfortable. My Grubhub is here. So we're gonna keep working with this video as fast as we can so I can eat my food. Also, I think it's just different when you have to lesson plan. Again, with CDC guidelines, just making sure that you plan for really small groups or for work that can be done independently or whatever it may be. When it comes to remote teaching, I feel like I also have a ton of cons. So many. I think honestly in the spring, my biggest issue and gripe with remote teaching was the work-life balance. I think that's a huge con for teachers and for kids. You're working and you're living in the same place. You're looking at a screen all day, so the screen time and just like overall use of technology. Also, I feel like one thing that I heard through all of Instagram was just this idea of like a lack of progress. I almost felt like I wanted to jump through the screen and reach out to help the kid, but I couldn't because there was a screen between us, and I felt like I wasn't making the progress that I would have been able to make in person. Also, I think a big con for remote teaching when it comes to special ed is just how much we have to rely on parents and guardians for prompting and for support. And I love parents and guardians. I love the whole family structure. I think that's like a great thing to have. But when you're like relying on them to like access lessons, to help students with lessons, to be there all day to support, you almost kind of feel guilty, like you're like relying so heavily on these adults to like prompt everybody. There's no way for it to be as engaging. Sometimes it is fun. Sometimes kids are engaged when they're looking at a screen and they're seeing, all these moving videos and people that they care about. But honestly, it's not the same as like being in front of a child, like getting them to look at you and, have some attention on their task, and you do have like more control over that when you're in person versus remote. All right, so now we can get into the positives because I think we need to end on a positive note. So there definitely are some pros that I've found with remote teaching, and specifically for like me as a special educator, a teacher, a human when it comes to remote teaching. I feel like I have a bit more time, which sounds kind of weird, but when I have lessons, and they're either individual lessons or group lessons, I'm still sitting. Like I'm not physically like moving my body all the time. I have a chance to drink water. If I have a water there, I have a chance to get a snack. I'm able to go to the bathroom without having to ask someone to come and stand in my room for me. I feel like in terms of like my timing and my time management, I've found that it's been much easier for me. I think a big pro is that either you see students one-on-one or you see them in a smaller capacity and they're not physically in front of you. So when there is a behavior that happens, you can try and help, but ultimately you can't really control it. Also, if there's like a kid that's being too loud and they're going to trigger other kids, you can mute them. Or you see a kid one-on-one, they're not really interested in learning that day, like you just do a little bit and then you can, sign off. And so I think there's definitely more flexibility when it comes to stuff like that. Also, for germs and for germs' sake, it does feel safer. And I've had a couple instances where I've recorded my lessons that I've taught online and sent them to like different like instructional leaders and stuff. But also I've been able to go back and watch them myself, and that was just not something that I would have done in person. But to be able to like record my lesson and watch it back has a lot of benefits to helping me like see what worked, what didn't work, things I didn't notice before about students, and like being able to see how they looked on the screen while I was focusing on teaching, has been really, really helpful for me. So there are also a lot of pros of teaching in person, obviously, because almost all of us have taught in person. That's like the baseline of teaching, right? I do think that when it comes to like prompting, getting kids' attention, being able to assess them accurately, being able to like focus on IEP goals and knowing exactly where they are, all of those things are better in person, hands down. Oh, one con I forgot to add about in person is you really never get to go to like the bathroom. You never get to snack, you never get to go to the bathroom. It's go, 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 but you already know that. You guys are all teachers. I think modeling things in person is so much easier, and providing like specific supports. I mean, all of the supports and things that have been created for special ed honestly are created for in person. I mean, down to the pencil, down to how they're going to sit. I mean, yesterday I had an OT come and like rearrange a couple of my desks to make them a little bit better, and that was just so helpful. And I didn't realize how helpful that was. But when you're seeing a kid through a screen, you don't get to make those minor adjustments to help, and you end up having to coach parents or guardians through that, but it's just so different. That was a lot of information, but I hope that some of this is helpful. Obviously, you cannot control what your school chooses to do. Please don't stress or feel anxious about these kind of things, because they're kind of out of our control in a lot of ways, but I think we can still advocate and try our best to
I don't know, have a career that's somewhat safe. I don't know if that's too much to ask as a teacher, but maybe it is in 2020. But anyway, I hope that something was beneficial and sparked an idea in your brain. And yeah, I will talk to you guys in the next video.